Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav etzivanu, la'asok b'divrei Torah, la'asok b'divrei Torah, la'asok b'divrei Torah, la'asok b'divrei Torah, la'asok b'divrei Torah. Okay, Shalom. We're still continuing with Judaism 101. This is the more advanced class. If you were watching this, you may be a little lost if you haven't been around for the last 6 months. But we also are doing the beginning Judaism 1 class that is on Tuesdays and on Thursdays at 1 o'clock. So make sure you give a little charity, because we should all give charity to something, so the angel of charity blesses us in our study. Okay. We're going to talk tonight. We're at that place. Last week in this class we dealt with, hey Mark, we dealt with the 1,000 years, this time period between the destruction of the temple and, we get to the medieval commentators. So now we're going to start talking about a different part of Judaism. And I want you to, with some Jewish mysticism, but I want you to forget about everything you think you ever learned about Judaism, Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, etc. Throw it out the window, and let's start studying from a very real place as opposed to a pop place, if that makes sense. It's just an introductory class on it, but we should learn it properly. So the first piece to understand is this term Kabbalah is entirely a misnomer. It is not the right term to be used most of the time. Let me explain why. From the beginning of Judaism, we have Ma'aseh Bereshit and Ma'aseh Merkavah. Okay? Ma'aseh Bereshit means the workings of creation. In other words, how and why did God create the universe? Ma'aseh Merkavah is the workings of the chariot, the Merkavah. This is the chariot discussed in the book of Ezekiel. And it's really how and why does God sustain the universe? These are the two primary questions that any human being wants to know, anyone wants to ask. Okay? And they have these two different schools, these two different ways of thinking, and we have certain texts that are brought in. And then you have this man named Rabbi Isaac Luria, Ha'ari. It's known as Ari, A-R-I. It stands for the Holy Rabbi Isaac, or the Ashkenazi Rabbi Isaac, depending on whom you're asking. And he kind of takes all of the different information from all the different places of Jewish mysticism, and he integrates it together. And that becomes known as Lurianic Kabbalah. The word lekabel means to receive. Okay? And that's actually, when people today talk about Kabbalah, what they're talking about is Lurianic Kabbalah. But Jewish mysticism predates that by thousands of years, and that's what we're going to start talking about. Because we always need to reverse engineer, we always need to go back to the beginning, we need to go back to the early place, and only then can we really understand what's going on. Does that make sense to everyone? You guys can nod your heads over here. I can't see you, but if you are on Facebook Live and you have a question, just type it in. Otherwise here, you guys can raise your hands or yell, or Mark, you can just wave. I can see you, so so we can do whatever we do. So let's go back to the beginning. Okay, we started studying months ago. We started studying Bereshit bara Elohim et Hashemayim v'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. We talked about how that corresponds to the Big Bang Theory. We talked about how all these things are hidden in it. We tore apart the word Bereshit, all these kind of things. Our texts go kind of in this order. First we have Torah, right? Then we have, which is the 5 books of the scroll. Then we have Tanakh, which is Torah, Nevi'im, the prophetic section, and Ketuvim, the writing section. We then get into Mishnah, Gemara, Talmud. Okay, these texts that we've studied for so many weeks. Then we start getting some very other interesting texts. And before we get into them, I want to recommend a couple of books. Meditation, which the word is hispodadus or hitbodadut. In Hebrew comes the word bod and boded, to be alone, to be a branch of a tree, and still be connected to everything, is a big part of Judaism, our meditative tradition. The single best book I know about meditation, period, is this book right here. It's called, I'll put it up for you guys can see it. So you guys can see it. It's called Jewish Meditation by Aryeh Kaplan. And this is really an amazing, amazing piece of work. It is simplistic. It is made for the layperson. It's a phenomenal, phenomenal piece if you want to start understanding Jewish meditation. And since people have time on their hands right now, what better time to do that? Create a spiritual shield around yourself by having that Jewish meditation, by getting more aware of your relationship with God. We can't become closer to God. How can we become closer to the infinite? The reality is all we can do is be more aware of the relationship. Another amazing book is this book. Again by Kaplan, it's called Meditation and Kabbalah. And this both teaches about the theology as well as different techniques and understandings. Again, this is a more complicated book. It's not the first book that I would recommend. I would certainly recommend Jewish Meditation. He also has a book called Inner Space, which is a fabulous book about Jewish mysticism. But this is the primary book, Jewish Meditation, and this is an amazing book, Meditation and Kabbalah. Okay? Let's go back. So we have Torah, we have Tanakh, we have Mishnah, Gemara, Talmud. But we also have other texts because there are people, our sages, they're using the words of Torah and Tanakh to explain and understand Ma'aseh Bereshit, how and why did God create the universe, the workings of creation, and Ma'aseh Merkavah, the workings of the chariot, how and why does God sustain the universe. Those are really the only two big questions, aren't they? Everything else is kind of a whole other level being simplistic. So we have some other texts. We have this text right here. This is called the Bahir. You can tell it's pretty beat up and worn. But this is the Bahir, and it is attributed to Rabbi Nehunya ben Kahana from the 1st century. Okay, so we're talking 2,000 years old. Amazing, deep, deep piece. Starts going into the letters and different things like that. This is one of the primary books of Jewish meditation. There's really three. The other one is something called the Sefer Yetzirah. The book, it's called the Book of Creation, but Yetzirah really means formation. This is when you've heard of Sfirot, when you've heard of the 22 letters and the pathways. All comes from this. And now Talmud refers to this book, which is attributed to our father Abraham. Okay? It's talked about in Talmud. And supposedly, according to our teachings, there were rabbis who could make a golem. Every year, every night, every week for Shabbos, they would make a golem. And this golem is this, not a Star Trek-y thingy, but this golem would be this creature that would do their work, that would do things for them. I will tell you that I've spent a lot of years working on Sefer Yetzirah. A group of other scholars and rabbis. We studied every week on Wednesday mornings at 7 o'clock in the morning for years. And I think it took us 6 months just to get through the first chapter 1, verse 1. This is incredibly intense, should be studied with people. This is extremely, extremely intense and extremely, extremely powerful in terms of what it has. The other book that many people have heard about is this book called the Zohar. Okay, this is just one of the volumes. This is Danny Matt's edition. There are other editions of Zohar. And the Zohar is attributed to Shimon Bar Yochai. Shimon Bar Yochai was a Talmudic sage, and we're taught that Shimon Bar Yochai, in the time of Rome, that he was being chased by the Romans, and so he went and he lived in a cave. And years later, he came out of the cave, and he was, when he was told that it was okay, and everything he looked, he was so bright, so filled with God's light that everywhere he looked, burned in one way or another. But the Zohar and Shimon Bar Yochai are very, very special. Shimon Bar Yochai is such a sage that it's said that there was never a rainbow in his time, because God's covenant that he wouldn't destroy the people was actually Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So he lives in this cave with his son. They bury themselves in sand, and they eat nothing but water and the fruit of a carob tree, which is also used in other mystical traditions. For some reason, many traditions believe that if you eat just carobs for a long enough period, you have visions. I don't know. I haven't done it. But it's an amazing text, and the Zohar is phenomenal. The Zohar appears in the 13th century. That's really when it's discovered. And although it's attributed to Shimon Bar Yochai, there are many academics who believe it was not written by him. It was written by a man named Rabbi Moshe de Leon in Spain, and he wrote it, let's see if I can pronounce this correctly, pseudo-picographically, that he wrote it as if it was the style of Shimon Bar Yochai, excuse me, and as if it was from that Talmud, that Talmudic period. The tradition is, however, that he actually was the one who wrote this. We observe Shimon Bar Yochai's day of death on Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer. It's a very, very important time, and he was this enlightened being. So these are the three primary texts that are used to understand the text of Torah, Tanakh, and Talmud, and understand the more mystical meanings, going back again to this concept of how and why the world is created, and how and why is the world sustained. Now there are a couple of terms to know as we go through this, and again, this is very weird to be teaching it this way, but such is life, it's what we got to do at this time. And I do want to recommend not only drinking water for everyone, but mixing it with emergency or Aero or Airborne or other things to keep our immune systems nice and strong. We talk about one term called hisbodedut or hitbodedut, meditation. There's another term which is really what Judaism is about in many ways, and the word is called devakut. Devakut means to cleave. So this is just hanging out, and this is being unified, or this is being together. This is cleaving. And we should have devakut or devakus. We should have devakut, cleaving with God. We should cleave to God. God is our shield. God is our protector. God is our healer. That doesn't mean we don't use common sense too, but it does mean that it is the most important relationship. It's our relationship with Hashem, with God. And that is a big piece of all of this. We also have this term called Yehud. Yehud is this concept of unification, being unified with God. Another way of phrasing devakut. So when we start talking about Maaseh Bereshit or Maaseh Merkavah, the workings of the chariot, the workings of creation, let's talk for a minute about Maaseh Bereshit. We talked weeks and weeks and weeks ago, months ago actually, we talked about the importance of the four-letter name of God. This name, Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey, this was, if you remember the syllabus, this is the very first week we talked about the four-letter name of God. This is the skeleton key that unlocks everything, and now we're going to start to see how it unlocks everything. Okay? So, I'm going to do a little racing. I hope this is clear for everyone. But, when we look at God's name, we see that there's a Yud, a Hey, a Vav, and a Hey. Okay? The Yud looks kind of like an apostrophe, then the Hey, the Vav, the Hey. And if we look at a Yud, the way that it looks in the calligraphy of the Torah is kind of like this. Okay? So it's got this infinitesimally small point at the top. This teaches us that in everything there are four different sections, one for each letter of God's name, but there's also a hidden fifth. This is the infinitesimally small area. It's called the Kutz of the Yud. And this Kutz of the Yud, if you look at it here, you can see it looks, that little piece right up there, right? It's a hidden fifth. This is the model for all of Judaism, this name. So let me give you an example. We're about to have Pesach. God willing. How many cups of wine are there in a Passover Seder? You guys can raise your fingers if you want. Okay? Or you can just wait. So 4. No, there's 4 plus 1. There's 5. 4 and a hidden fifth. Right? There's 4 cups, but there's also Elijah's cup. How many questions are there? Right? Why is this night different from all the nights? And then we have these questions. There's 4 plus a hidden fifth. The 4 questions, but what about the first question? Why is this night different from all other nights? Okay? How many sons are there in a Passover Seder? There's the wise, the wicked, the simple, the one who is unable to inquire. In a traditional Haggadah, then there's a blank space. And that's for the one who doesn't even know Passover exists, a hidden fifth. And you will find that this is the model throughout Judaism. 4 plus 1. Okay? Corresponds to the 4 letters. 4 letters of God's name, and the hidden fifth, the Kutz of the Yud, the infinitesimally small place. If we look at our morning service upon which all of our services are based, first we have the morning blessings. Then we have the Pesukah de Zimra. Then we have the Shema blessings. Then we have the Amidah. And 3 days a week, Monday, Thursday, Saturday, there's a 5th part, the Torah service. Okay, so it's always 4 plus 1, 4 plus 1. It corresponds to these letters. Now we have an understanding that there are 4 plus 1 different worlds. And we have listed here the world of Asiyah, the world of making or doing, the world of Yetzirah, the world of forming, formation, the world of Bria, of creation, of creating, the world of Atzilut, of emanating, the world of Adam Kadmon, the primordial man. This is the first moment, the divine spiritual life. what does that mean, besides being a bunch of silly words? So, how many of you remember when you were kids, or when you had kids, or when you just liked it, you went to Disneyland, or you went to Alvera Street, or you went to wherever you went, and there were those little blown glass elephants and unicorns and all that stuff. Remember that? Okay? All right, so here's the little blown glass unicorn. Often in the mystical traditions, whether it's ours or whether it's Rumi with the Sufis, whether it's Kabir, whether it's Gibran, whether it's Ibn Ezra, whether it's even Gabriel, whoever it may be, the reference is made to God being the glass blower. So I want you to imagine that this is a little, do you have anything else here that would make better sense? No, I think this is probably best. This is a little blown glass unicorn, okay? It's by itself. That's the world of Asiya, of making. And remember, when the glass blower is blowing, starts off with this long piece of glass, and he's making it, and he forms this little thing, then he breaks it off, right? Well, while it's being formed, but it's still connected to the glass, to the long piece of glass that he's blowing, that's the world of formation, the world of Yetzirah. When he's got the glass itself, and he's just starting to do the whole process, and all this is a stick of glass and him, that's now the world of Bria, of creation. When he has the breath that emanates from him to blow into the glass to make this, that's the world of emanation or Atzilut. And his intention, the glass blower's intention before he even begins, is the world of Adam Kodman. Okay? It's just names to understand a little bit how we look at the world. They correspond to God's name, right? And the world of Asiya, the world of making, is the spinal He. The world of Yetzirah is the Vav, formation. The world of creation, of Bria, is this first He. And the world of emanation, of Atzilut, is the Yud. And the world of Adam Kadmon, the intention of that glass blower, is the Kutz of the Yud. Everything corresponds to this. When we look at our prayer service, if we were to look at the prayer service itself, I just said there are 4 sections, and then every 3 days, Monday, Thursday, Saturday, we have a hidden 5th section with the Torah reading. The first section of the Torah, or the first section of the morning service, is the Birkat HaShachar, the morning blessings. The morning blessings all have to do with physicality. Thank you, God, for letting me see. Thank you for clothing the naked. Thank you for letting me go to the bathroom. Thank you for letting me wash my hands. All those kind of things. All physical actions. That's the bottom He, the second He. It's the world of Asiya, of making. It's purely physical. When we get to the Vav, that is the world of Yetzirah, of formation. And in the world of Yetzirah, now these prayers, this corresponds to Pesukah de Zimra, part of our prayer service. And these prayers are physical based, but they have a little bit of spirituality with them. The Psalms are included in this, different other prayers like this. Okay? Then you have a third part, which is the first He that we have. This corresponds to the Shema and its blessings. These have a spiritual foundation with a little bit of physical overtone. The last part, which corresponds to the Yud, is the Amidah. This part of the service is to be purely spiritual. That's what the Amidah is. And that's why, because the Amidah, when we're supposed to sit with our feet together, right? We're supposed to keep our feet totally together. Why? Because we're at that moment, if we've had the right kavanah, the right intention in all of our prayers, then at that moment, we are like the angels. We know why we are here. We know what we are here for. And so we are able to be totally receptive in that place as spiritual beings. The great line in the Amidah is the line before we start. Adonai savatati takufi agiti hilatecha. It is not, it's usually translated, oh God, open my lips and make my mouth declare your glory, your praises. That's actually not what it is. When it says, ufi yagid tihilatecha, yagid is this very specific conjugation of Hebrew. It's called binyan hif'il. It's a causative verb. So really the best definition of it is, God, open my lips and cause my mouth to praise you. The idea being at that moment, we are purely spiritual, we are empty, and we hear God praying through us. So we know why we're here. This is found in everything we do. If you look at the cups of wine that you're going to have on Pesach, B'ezras Hashem, you're going to find that the first one has to do more with the physical world, and then get more and more spiritual as we go on. When we did our Tu B'Shvat Seder a few months ago, same type of thing. So this is the skeleton key that unlocks it all. Okay? Any questions so far on this group? Any questions on that group? Okay. I'm going to bypass this for a moment and move this out of the way for a moment. Okay. And take this and make a little line here. Okay. Let us look at the first line of the book Sefer Yetzirah. And this is not an easy line to understand. I'll repeat it, but from it's going to come a lot of understandings. And often if you look at any Kabbalistic structure or picture or whatever, you'll often see an image that looks like this. You can see it on the side of the book. Okay? This is called the Tree of Life. Let's look at what it says for a moment, and then let's try and understand it in a brief, simplistic way. It says, with 32 mystical paths of wisdom engraved Yah, the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, the living God, King of the universe, El Shaddai, merciful and gracious, high and exalted, dwelling in eternity, whose name is holy, he is lofty and holy. And he created his universe with 3 books, Sfarim, with text, Sefer, with numbers, Sephar, and with communication, Sipur. Pretty confusing lines, so let's try and understand it first. First concept is that it says there's 32 mystical pathways. Now that can be broken up into 10 and 22. Why 10 and 22? There are 10 digits, 0 through 9, and there are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. Okay? I know we're moving fast. This is really hard without dialogue. Celeste, I can't see you, but I'm betting at this point there are questions you want to ask, and you can't even raise your hand. So there's 32 paths with it. Engraved Yah. Engraving is not stamping on, it's pulling out. So we have this idea that there are first 10 things, and it names them here. Yah, the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, the living God, King of the universe, El Shaddai, merciful and gracious, high and exalted, dwelling in eternity, whose name is holy, he is lofty and holy. Okay, those are 10 points. So, I'm going to make 10 points here. I hope if you needed this, you already copied it. I hope this can be seen. So I'm going to make 10 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 points. See the 10 points? Can you guys see down there? Can you guys see it there? Maybe you can make sure it's zoomed in. Okay. And zoomed in on there a little bit. All right. There are 22 pathways to connect these 10 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, who else am I missing? 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 22 pathways. Each pathway corresponds to a different name of God. If you want to see the image clearly done, here's a better image of it right there. So you can see it. That's a better image of it. Because there's one rule in any class that I teach. You don't get to laugh at my art. Okay? Don't get to laugh at it. So there's 22 pathways to connect these 10 energy centers, these 10 sphirot, these 10 energy centers, these 10 beings. This is not chakras. It is a much more detailed system than the chakra system. 3 of these are outside the body, 7 are in. So I'm going to erase this again. Hopefully you can see the 22 pathways. And we have, again, let me do the 10 pathways. So 10 places. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is where you don't get to laugh. This is a human being. Mark, you're already laughing. Didn't I say there's no, you can guffaw, you can chuckle, there's no laughing allowed. Watch. The head is right here. course he's Jewish. You know what? Let's make him a cigar smoker too. Okay, so there's our man with the 10 pathways. Let me try and fix those pathways a little bit better because they really are not very good. Okay, we have 10 pathways. We can even move these in a little closer to make it actually look right. When we hear the Sefirot and we understand how they affect the body, both macrocosmically and microcosmically, this is how they look. Okay, so we have 3 above our head, we have in our chest, we have here our solar plexus, we have 2 in our hips, 1 towards our genitalia, and this one actually should be a little lower than that, where we connect to the earth. I hope this is making sense. Mark, you can't control yourself with laughing at my art, can you? Oh, I can't, you have to unmute yourself. I can't hear your heckling. So this is what it looks like, and here's why. Now, you may have heard people talk about Tiferet being the balance. So this means this place is called Tiferet, which means harmony or balance. Okay? You may have heard this place called foundation, which is the word Yesod. These aren't random names. Now, if you've studied Lurianic Kabbalah, if you've looked at Lurianic Kabbalah at any point, if you've learned at any point, you've heard that here are the names of the Sefirot, and here's where they belong. Well, that's just not, it's nonsensical. It doesn't make sense. Why is that the way it is? And if we just accept that that's what we're taught, then we're just learning dogma, and that's really a waste of time in my opinion. Still, we need to understand where. So throughout the Torah, and even in our prayer service, does anyone remember when the Torah comes out, right? We sing this chant, we go, L'cha Adonai ha-gedula v'ha-gevura v'ha-tiferet v'ha-netzach v'ha-chod. Sound familiar to people? Yes? Okay. That's what each of these things are called. L'cha Adonai ha-gedula v'ha-gevura v'ha-tiferet v'ha-netzach v'ha-chod. Ki kol b'shamayim, which means everything that's in the heavens, u'ba'aretz, everything that's in the earth. These things are hidden in our liturgy itself. Now let's take and overdraw something else on this. Okay. So here's the human being, right? Let's look at something. Here's a hey. Here's the vav. Here's a hey. And here's a yud. Can you see the red on there? Is it dark enough? I'll make it a little darker. Here's the yud. Here's a hey. Here's a vav. And here's a hey. If we look at this as the name of God, that we are in the image of God, then the foundation of this structure, if we were to make it visually, right? The foundation of the structure itself, as an architect, as a graphic designer, if this was building blocks, this was Legos, is right here, right? That's the foundation place. If you took that out, the whole structure would fall, right? That's why this is called foundation right here. Not because sexuality is the foundation of your life. That is taught a lot, but that's actually not why. It's because if we take ourselves and we look at ourselves as the name of God, we find that this is the foundation where they connect, because it's what holds the vav in place to support the other hey and yud. Is that making sense to you guys on there? Is that making sense to people? Are there any questions from people watching on Facebook? Okay. I know this is complex and it's hard to do it, but we're doing the best we can doing it this way. So each of these names, if you see where they are, each of these points correspond to places for God's name, and they correspond to our energy centers, to parts of our body, and all of it is true. It's not that one is truer than the other, one is more important, or one is better than the other. It's that it's building layers on layers on layers. This is part of the secret of Jewish mysticism, and when we understand how the world is unified. This is a teaching through Luria, but we understand this because it's overlaying things on top of each other. It overlays the idea that we're built in the name of God, that we're created in the image of God. It overlays the concepts of what we read in Torah, Tiferet, etc. It overlays God's name itself. It overlays our body. It is a truth from that what is microcosmic is also macrocosmically true, and what is macrocosmically true is microcosmically true. Now we have this idea when we go to Maaseh Bereshit. And in Maaseh Bereshit, studying the working of creation, there are all sorts of questions. How did God create the universe? So the storyteller Michael Meade, the teacher of the storyteller Michael Meade, has a great comment. He says, the white people say that God is a circle, and people are on the other side of outside of the circle, and the native people say that there's a circle, and God's got a point in the circle, and they want to know, how did they get out of the circle? How did that even happen? Well, we have this concept. The concept is called Tzimtzum. How does God create the universe? Latzum. He withdraws. This means withdraw or to contract. Tzimtzum is the idea that the way God creates the universe is God has this intention to create partners. And all the angels, by the way, say, God, you shouldn't create human beings. All they're going to do is mess things up. Angels don't like it because angels don't have free will. We have free will, which means that when we do bad, it's our choice. When we do good, it's that much more meaningful because we do have that choice. When God creates the universe, God withdraws God's self from space, creating a vacuum, creating a big salad bowl, let's call it, and then throws in sparks of God's light into this big vacuum that he is Tzimtzum, that he is withdrawn from. And these sparks of God's light shatter the entire vessel because nothing can contain God, and from that comes the next level and comes creation itself and the universe itself. So in order for God not to be a puppet master and at the same time to be able to create and be omnipotent, the answer is through this process of Tzimtzum, to have withdrawn, to contract it. God chooses to contract God's self in order to throw more God sparks into the space. There are similarities but differences, but some similarities. If you've studied at all the Greek concept of the immovable mover and movable mover, if anyone's ever studied that, the idea is that if something moves, something must have sparked it to move. So there's the movable mover, which created everything, and the immovable mover, which only created the movable mover. We're not like that, but it's a good way to start bridging into what we are. God withdraws, creates the space, and then throws more of God's self into the space, and then that shatters the vessels, making God go all over the place and creating creation. And part of our job as Jews is to redeem those lost sparks, to bring God more consciously into this world by choice. Because we have free will, we don't have to do good. Which means when we do good, it's that much more meaningful. But our job as Jews is to redeem the world. And we do it by helping each person become more aware and deepen his or her own relationship with Hashem. We do a lot of stuff in this temple, and if you kind of look at everything we do, there's a commonality. The commonality is that everything we do is to try and help each person deepen their own relationship with God through the path of Judaism. It's really that simple. To be appreciative, and if you really experience in any moment how much God loves us, it becomes very hard to do the wrong thing. I don't write sermons, and I don't write the Bar Torahs. When I write articles, but I don't write whatever I say. So you can see there's nothing written here. And I don't even plan typically my high holiday sermons until that day. I'll have an idea beforehand because I need to know what music the guys are going to play. But typically I don't even necessarily know, and that's why a number of years ago when the stock market crashed on Erev Rosh Hashanah, I was able to talk about it because I didn't have a set speech I had to say. There's one exception. In August of 2009, when my boys, thank God, were born, and I'm sitting there, and they're each holding my pinkies. The little hands are holding my pinkies. And I'm just overwhelmed. And any of you who are a parent know exactly the feeling I'm talking about. I'm looking at a couple parents online. Nod, yes, we know the feeling. Thumbs up if we know that feeling. When, yeah, okay. And I just lost you, Mark. I don't know where we went, but we lost you. Every picture. And the moment they were holding that, I thought to myself, I planned my Yom Kippur sermon for that year, because I thought to myself, if I can love these two beings this much, how much does God love us? And the idea of not being willing to talk to God is as absurd as, God forbid, my children not being willing to talk to me. As parents, we always want our children to talk to us, to question us, to dialogue with us, to really deepen the relationship. Well, that's all God wants too. A few years ago, we had Sam, our cantor, at High Holidays. He sang Adele's song, Hello. All God really wants is for us to pick up the phone and say hi. This is a way for us to become more aware of our relationship with God, and in so doing, deepen it. This is it. The moment you make it dogma, you miss the point. The moment it becomes about, well, I'm now awakening my Gevura and my Gedula, and my Chesed and my Gevura, and I'm awakening my balance and my Tiferet, is the whole point. Because Tiferet connects to everything, that's a place that we can enter, but everything is a gift, and that's the idea of getting Devakut and becoming at one and cleaving and feeling God's love for us. And most of us don't most of the time. If we did, people wouldn't be terrified and hoarding and in panic right now. They'd realize there's a pandemic, they'd deal with what they got to deal with, and there'd be no fear about it. Because we know how much God loves us. This is all to experience God's love. That's, at the end of the day, what all this stuff is for. And it's so easy to get lost in the process of what we are studying. So if you want to, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. If you want to learn more, the best book is to start. This is a great book. There's a book called Inner Space. It's to start learning this kind of theology and this piece. But there's another very, very deep piece of Jewish mysticism, and I much prefer saying Jewish mysticism as opposed to Kabbalah, which has all these different connotations of a bracelet and Kabbalah water and all this other mishigas. And that's Hisbodedus, or Hitbodedut, meditation. Now we can't really teach meditation very effectively online. There's some things you can do, some things you can't. And it would take a Zoom meeting with people talking and really, having the commitment to do that. So this is going to be something for you to practice of Hitbodedut or Hisbodedus, to understand a little bit more. I'm going to just move this a little bit. To understand a little bit more of how to experience those energy centers, how to experience Maseh Bereshit or Maseh Merkavah, how the world is created, to listen. Our watchword is Shema, but how much do we really listen? We hear, but do we ever really listen? And so here I'm going to give you a technique to work on for the next week. To help, and you can work on this forever. I do it all the time. I've taught it to my boys since they were children. I taught it to the Chicago White Sox, the other one, the World Championship. I've worked with athletes, all sorts of people. And it's called a triangle breath. So, first piece is to understand that we are here to receive. Okay? To stop trying to control things, but rather to receive, to lekabel. We are not breathing. God is blowing breath into us. We are not exhaling. God is taking the breath from us. We are like balloons. And we're receiving. That means when God exhales, we inhale. When God inhales, we exhale. And then when God is still, we are still. Now here's an interesting piece. Most people, if you say to them, hold your breath, they'll go, that's so foolish. That's not the way to hold your breath. The way to hold your breath is with your lungs empty. So triangle breathing is to inhale to a count of 4 or 7 or 12 or whatever it may be. To exhale to a count of 4 or 7 or 12 or whatever it may be. And then to hold with our lungs empty for the same count. So a triangle breath would look something like holding with my lungs empty. That is counterintuitive to Western culture. If every person in our community did this breath for 12 minutes twice a day, the world itself would change. And that's not an exaggeration, I swear you would. If I say hold your breath and we go like this, that's based on fear. I've got it. I'm not going to let go of it. I got it. I don't have to worry. I'm not, As opposed to holding with empty is based on the faith that when it's needed, God will fill it up again. It's a choice of faith over fear, and you can see it in the way we breathe. Vast majority of people, they breathe and they hold it and then they go, and that's how they interact with life, right? But the mystic, the one who understands Judaism, who understands life, breathes and speaks or does whatever they do with their lungs empty. Creates an entire different dynamic and a different way of looking at the world. And you can do this in your car. You can do this in your home. You can do this while you're taking class right now. To inhale to a count of 4. To exhale through our mouth to a count of 4. And to hold for a count of 4. Yeah, you ready for a really great secret? If you have to think of one symbol for Judaism, what is the symbol we think of? We think of the Magen David, called the Star of David, the 6-pointed star. The Magen David does not mean Star of David. Magen David means the shield of David. David was a singer, he understood this. Because let's look at these two triangles for a moment. We do in purple. Because when we're in sync with God, where we're just receiving our breath and God is taking and we're resting, then the triangles, this one is up and they overlay each other. And when we inhale, God is exhaling. And when God is exhaling, we are inhaling. And that's where the Star of David comes from, the Magen David. Maybe you can zoom in on that for a moment. For both of those. That's where it comes from. David knew that God was always his shield. Because David was a singer. He understood breath. It's interesting that when we understand breath, it changes our whole perspective. Traditionally, I don't know if this is still true, but for many decades, and I assume it still is, the highest GPA on high school and college athletic teams were always the swimmers. Why? Because they are naturally doing rhythmic breathing. Right? And with rhythmic motion. Their minds are naturally going into a heightened state of awareness. They're naturally getting into that space. When someone says they don't meditate, they are just not thinking. We all naturally meditate. If we look at meditation, based upon the work of Dahlia Newberg in The Mystical Mind, if we look at meditation as a neurophysiological response, when someone is in the zone, they are in a heightened state of awareness. When they are having an orgasm, when they are dreaming, when they are dancing, when they are singing. In some other traditions, when they take psychotropics, when they do different things, it changes our brain chemistry. What happens? The sympathetic and parasympathetic systems shut down and the hippocampus becomes 400% more active. So we can actually put a very distinct quality to that space of being in a heightened state of awareness or being in the zone. Being totally present in the moment and as a result being aware. Being like the branch of a tree that is conscious that it is alone as a branch but is connected to the leaves, to the trunk, to the roots as a result to all other trees that exist. All of this can be found just through this breathing technique. Again, it doesn't matter if you count to 4, to 7, to 12. It is a breathing technique you will find in multiple cultures, not just ours, where it's an inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth, and the holds get longer and longer. And the triangle gets more and more extended. And as a result, we start to float. We start to feel how the triangles that seem so separate can come together to be our shield like David, to be our shield of God's name, of the world. This is the important thing. If you don't learn the Sfirot, if you don't learn all this other stuff, this will lead you to the place of understanding where those teachings came from. Where those teachings of God's name being part of us. And there's all sorts of meditations. There are meditations we use with God's name. There's what's called the 21st Yuchud, where we call out God's name with different vowels. There's all sorts of meditations which really aren't necessarily appropriate to teach on any kind of video. But this one piece, if you do 12 minutes a day, and the reason 12 minutes is we found that 12 minutes seems to be a place where it makes a qualitative difference. If you do it twice a day, don't do it twice a day, do it once a day. If you don't do it 12 minutes, do it 3 minutes. If you do it before you go to sleep, do it when you wake up, do it while you're in the car, do it while you're doing whatever. People are home right now, take some time and just do the triangle breathing by itself. That will help each of us, as we do it more and more, surrender, start to understand our relationship with God, start to have devakut, and as a result, start to know, what are we really here for? What are we really doing? And the answer is never fear. And this breathing technique, which is great for athletes, fabulous for athletes. I've taught it to NCAA athletes, I've taught professional athletes. As I say, I taught it to the Chicago White Sox in 2005. This breathing technique on its own, by itself, will start to help you understand and deepen your relationship with life. So you know who you are, and it'll start to take the fear away. Anyone who's got panic around these holidays, around this virus, excuse me, got panic around Passover too, with a lot of cleaning to do. But anyone who's got panic, this is a way to alleviate it. Then you can start thinking of God's name being on you, right? As you're doing your triangle breath, being aware that this is the Yud, and this is the He, and this is the Vav, and this is the He. That we are the imprint of God. And when we walk through the world, and when we feel, and we give and take through the world, and we think, always realizing we are in partnership with Hashem, with God, then we will know its power. I want to end with one more piece tonight. Okay? When we talked about the prayer service, when we talked about these letters, God's name, there seems to be a distinction. But there's a bridge to help us gradate, to help us merge, help us segue from one letter to the other, from the world of Asiyah to the world of Yetzirah, from the world of Yetzirah to Bria. And again, we find it in the brilliance of our prayer service. Between the morning blessings and the Pesukah de Zimra, does anyone know what we say? We say a Kaddish. Between the Pesukah de Zimra and the Shemonet's blessings, we say a Kaddish. Between the Shemonet's blessings and the Amidah, we say a Kaddish. Between all these different places, the Kaddish is a transitionary prayer, and it is probably the most misunderstood prayer in all of Judaism. We say the Kaddish after we study, we say it after sections of the prayer service, we say it when someone dies. And the secret to understanding why is found, in the grammar. Remember, I spoke a little bit earlier that when it says Ufi Yagi Tehilatacha, it doesn't mean so that my mouth may praise you, but it's cause my mouth to praise you. The Kaddish is in a form of grammar called Binyan Hitpa'el. It's self-reflexive. It's doing it to itself. And it's in third person. So Yit Gadal is the root Gimel Daled Lamed, meaning large or big. Yit Gadal means He made himself, or it made itself, larger. Yitkadash, that KDSH sound, meaning holiness. Yitkadash means he or it made itself more holy. What is the he or it? The next two words say it. Shemei Rabbah, not God. Shemei Rabbah, God's great name. When we study, since God is infinite, God is always growing, by definition. If God stops growing, God is not infinite, right? There's a boundary. So, when we study, we are making God more godly. We are making God Yikadal. We are helping God's name to become larger. Yikadash, we're making God's name to become more holy. Yit Ramam, we're uplifting God's name. Yit Halal, God is praising God's self. That is the transition between each of these letters. The Kaddish is always the transition, it's the bridge. It's why we have to do it between the portions of the service, between these worlds, between the letters of God's name, and why we say it when someone dies. God forbid. It's why we say a Kaddish. In one form or another, whether it's a Kaddish to Rabbanan, or a Hatzi Kaddish, or a full Kaddish, or whatever it may be. Mourner's Kaddish, whatever it may be. The Kaddish is the segue. Every time we become more true to who we are, every time we cleave with God, we are helping God become more godly. That is our responsibility as Jews. To redeem the sparks of God's creation, to bring them back, to make them more holy, more godlike, and in so doing, to live a more right and righteous life. I know this was a lot of information tonight, in a very short period of time, and it's difficult again because we're not having dialogue. But you can always email me for the questions. You can always call me. You guys know my phone is always open. And it's really important to start to understand a little bit, because this is all hidden right in our main text. We study the workings creation, for the lack of the right term, it's the wrong term, but the Kabbalah of creation, the very first week, didn't we, when we studied Maaseh Bereshit? In the same way, as we do the triangle breathing, we can start to understand how we are the personification, the anthropomorphication of God's name, and how important that really, really is. Okay? Tomorrow at 1, we have another one of the beginning classes that we had this 6 months ago. And again on Thursday. On Wednesday at noon, we have a class on hidden secrets of Passover, Pesach. An email is going to go out in the next 24 hours or so that I know for some people it's hard to get matzah, especially to get shmor matzah. I have gotten extra boxes for people who need shmor matzah or regular matzah, if you can't get it. The temple is putting a Haggadah online on our website that was written by Dr. Trish Vani and myself. We were asked to do an interfaith Haggadah, so it works under Orthodox standards, but there's all commentaries, both modern and ancient in Judaism, and they actually have Christian commentaries on it as well, but so that people can have, if they're having a Zoom Seder, do that. And then we keep studying. But the most important thing from tonight that I would say is, rather than thinking about the dogma and learning, start to experience the breathing and start to see what you come up with. So I thank you for doing this. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever it may be. We are not going to have Monday class next week because we'll be preparing for Passover and we'll be cleaning our house, and so we're not going to have class. We have our own chametz cleaning to do, but hopefully we'll see you during the week. And then we have, this is the big Shabbat. It's Shabbat HaGadol. We'll be doing it on Facebook Live, and we'll actually have services. We are limited with services in our sanctuary as well. Matt and Benny and I will be there in Orlando, and we'll be doing what we do. And but this is Shabbat HaGadol, this big Sabbath before Passover. So please watch on Facebook Live, be part of it. If you have comments, email them to me, call me, whatever it means. Thank you, and I hope to see you all soon.